I'd like to call to order the work session, October 19, 2020. We are all here. Our city clerk will now give some information of how to participate in tonight's meeting.
While the Goodyear City Council meetings are open to the public, the occupancy has been reduced to implement social distancing. Seating is generally available on a first-come basis. Face masks are required and must be worn when moving throughout the building. Our residents still have several ways to address the council. They may submit their questions and comments to publiccomments@goodyearaz.gov, and during meetings, they can view the meeting using Facebook, YouTube, and the link from our agendas using Granicus. After the meetings are completed, they can also be viewed on YouTube. The public may always contact the mayor and council at any time by sending an email to gycouncil@goodyearaz.gov.
Thank you very much. All right, let's go on to the agenda item number 1. First item is council to receive an information on the utility rate study to discuss recommendations. Public Works Director Javier Cetovich and Finance Director Doug Sandstrom presenting. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So I'm warming up the crowd with the sales pitch first, but I'll make it short. So good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening we'll be taking a look at the funding needs for the next 5 years for several of our enterprises, that is water, wastewater, our sanitation, and also we'll be looking at some options for funding our needs for the stormwater system as well. We are at the end of a 5-year plan that started in January of 2016 and expires, meets its end in December of 2020 this year. So this current rate plan funded all the needs of the water and wastewater enterprises, and that is capital operations and also some of the financial obligations of those enterprises. So 5 years ago, working with an engaged group of stakeholders that represented citizens as well as some representatives from the business sector. The effort 5 years ago with this group helped shape the rate plan the way it is today. And we didn't want to lose the opportunity of doing the same thing. And so therefore what we did is we gathered a group of engaged citizens to help us put together a proposal that you will see this evening. So I will start by giving you an overview of the work that we did with the rate committee, and Doug and our consultant Dan Jackson with Wilden will get into the particulars of the rate plan. And we want you to know that we are here only after really clearly identifying the needs of our existing infrastructure as well as our services. And also, like I said, having the opportunity of really discussing our approach with our engaged citizens to validate our strategies. That was really important. So for the current rate review process, Council approved the rate review committee back in February of 2020. And our first meeting took place in March. Soon after that, and that was an on-site meeting in person. Right after that, as we all know, COVID-19 impacted how we did things. And it took a bit to regroup. Back in July, we were able to regroup with the committee members, and we had the rest of our meetings online. And it was really great to see how adaptable and flexible they were and helped us through the process. We had 7 meetings with our last meeting taking place in September. I think it was September 1st of this year. A lot of hard work, and we started with 13 committee members, and we ended with 13 committee members. So it was a great sign that they were really committed. But at this time, if I may, for just a second, I'd like to recognize our committee members. We have one here that joined us today. And please, Bob Payne, if you can stand up and just, Council. Well, thank you. And, again, we couldn't be here unless we were able to really get that feedback from our citizens. It was really, really important. So staff spent time sharing with the committee an overview, and I'm sorry, got to get the slides up there. So staff spent time with the committee giving them an overview of our operations. We looked at operational and capital strategies for water, wastewater, sanitation, and storm. We share with them how these strategies are put together, really with the goal of achieving safety and reliability first. And those are some key things that are really important in public works. In fact, they're part of our mission statement. Safety, reliability, and then improvement can be built upon the foundation of those two being in place. We shared with them how most of our plan is really focused on attaining those goals, and the very little discretion is really left for modifying the needs that are ahead of us. Committee members gave us some great feedback, and they talked to us and gave us a lot of feedback on water and wastewater strategies that we shared with them and the goals that we're trying to achieve. They validated those. They really gave us some ideas about how to deal with the impact on the rates related to the efficiencies that we have seen working with a new sanitation contractor. And the committee helped us validate also the current milestone that we're in on how we manage our stormwater system. This is a really important thing, and there's some great decisions to be made in order to make sure that we run that particular system using the same principles that we do with other utilities. So before we dive into the rate discussion, when we're getting there, I'd like to give you just a quick overview of the city services, the current state of the city services that we are talking about this evening. Back in 2016, the Integrated Water Master Plan identified about $51 million worth of projects on the capital side. This master plan was used as one of the foundations to develop the rate plan that we have in place today. I like to share with council that that plan really was focused on asset replacements and the need to develop redundant water sources for the city. We are in the last stage of implementing that plan, and in fact, our last well is under construction and will be completed in very early calendar year 2021. So all of the goals of that plan have been accomplished. The rate for sanitation services has been steady since 2008, so there has not been any change in the rates. In July of 2019, we transitioned to a new vendor for container services, and that is RAD, or right-of-way disposal. And right-of-way disposal has its roots in the Valley. They're a local firm, but they're also owned, they're part of a group of firms owned by a national firm called Waste Connections. But the ability of working with a local firm has, as I had said before, created some efficiencies that will show up in the rates when Doug discusses those with you. And then ultimately, or lastly, the stormwater needs in the city are growing, and we recommend that it's time to formalize and centralize how that system is managed. And now I'd like to share with council in a bit more detail what we recommend as far as stormwater system, as far as the stormwater system. But before I do that, I'd just like to highlight that this effort is really focused on the public stormwater system, not on the private on-site. For example, HOA, retention basins, and that actually includes like city-owned facilities that have stormwater infrastructure built within the facility. This program focuses on the public system, although there are some regulatory and enforcement overlaps. The system is really focused on the public infrastructure. Support of the system overall has grown, to use the word, organically over the years. As needs were identified, departments stepped in and took care of things. You know, as it is in Goodyear, when something happens, we'll pitch in and get it done. But overall, the needs have not been really fully understood over the years, and our strategies as a city have been really mainly been reactive when it came to stormwater. And some of the symptoms of that approach really showed when we very effectively reacted to the issues at Bullard. But the questions that those issues brought up could have been answered a lot better if we had been proactive rather than reactive. Funding is scattered throughout the different departments in the city for support of the stormwater system, and potentially is not really even clearly understood how money is assigned for the maintenance of this program. Regulatory compliance is becoming very challenging at this point as the system continues to, as the needs continue to escalate. So staff concluded that it was time to take a comprehensive look at the system needs today and in the future and develop a stormwater program that is well managed. The result was that we put together a cost of service study to really understand how, first of all, identify the needs, and then identify how much these needs were going to cost us. We have identified operational needs, asset management needs, capital projects to improve the system, staffing needs, and so on. And the program takes a ramp-up approach, where not everything happens the first year, but we will ramp up our vision over the next 5 years. And funding for this effort is needed, and we're here this evening to propose an option on how this can be funded. So that's all I have, and at this point, before I pass it on to Doug, I ask Mayor and Council if you have any questions or comments for me. Okay, thank you.
I do.
Oh, you do.
So on the stormwater system, is there a direct impact on the residents or commercial properties? I mean, what will need to be communicated to them about any kind of changes or impacts on them?
So, so you will see as I had mentioned, an option for funding the program that will require a fee for both residential and commercial entities
So
in
you'll
the city.
get to that. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
If you can just go to the next slide, Javier. As Javier just discussed with you, he laid down the foundation of the system and that the rates are here to support. One of the things that I want all of you to pay attention to and think about as we're going through the rate study with our consultant shortly here is the Citizens Rate Committee came up with several comments that we have up here that they wanted us to really think about and make sure that we had incorporated into the rate study. Lessening the impact in year one, smoothing the rate increase, developing a philosophy of non-rate fees, establishing the stormwater utility, and then increasing the irrigation rate to ensure conservation. We'll talk about most of those as we go through it, and then we'll readdress these at the end as well to let you know how they are built into the study and how the Citizens Committee impacted us. So with that, I am going to introduce Dan Jackson. He is, Javier, pass this over to me, so I'll give it right back. Dan is with Willdan Consulting. He did our last 5-year study, 2015. For those of you who are here, maybe recognize Dan. So he is very familiar with rate studies, very familiar with the city of Goodyear, and he will pause after each section to take any questions from you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dan.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. As Doug said, my name is Dan Jackson, Vice President of Willdan Financial Services.
It's got to be green, so if you just, there you go.
There you go. It is a privilege and an honor to be back here before you. As Doug indicated, we had the fortune of being selected to do the rate study back in 2015 that ultimately resulted in a 5-year rate plan that the city implemented that gave you the revenues that you needed to service your growth and to continue to fund all of your operating expenses. Well, here in 2020, we were tasked with pretty much the same set of responsibilities. Water costs continue to go up. The city continues to grow, and as the city grows, it does incur new costs. And as these costs are incurred, there has to be a way to pass it through to the ratepayers in a way that gets you the revenues you need, while at the same time, to the best extent possible, minimizing the impact on the ratepayers. That's why it's very prudent to do these kind of long-term financial plans. Because one of the true benefits of running a water and wastewater operation is that you tend to know years in advance when certain expenditures are going to happen. When are you going to have to build that treatment plant? When are you going to have to put in those new lines? If you know that's coming, then you can develop a financial plan that gradually phases in the rates that you need in order to finance that. One of the things I've learned in my 35 years of doing this for cities all over the country and all over the world is that ratepayers don't like big sudden changes.
No,
They don't like big increases. Many times cities think that they're doing their ratepayers a favor by keeping their rates low year after year after year after year. And then they have to do a new treatment plant and they end up doing a 25% rate increase. Guess what? They all forget about the fact that the rates were low for a number of years and then they concentrate on that one big increase. And the common complaint is, well, if you would just increase our rates a little bit at a time, this wouldn't have been such a big burden for us and our families. And that's exactly the philosophy we took forward in doing this rate plan. As Doug indicated, we've got a pretty fair amount of information for you to look at tonight. I'll try to go through it as quickly as possible. I'm going to start out by going over the water and wastewater plan. Then we'll talk about your solid waste utility. Then we'll go through the stormwater utility, the non-rate revenues, and then we'll summarize and talk a little bit about the next steps. This is an information presentation only. We're not asking you to make any decisions tonight. I think it's very important the first time you see this kind of information to take the time to digest it, take the time to look and see what your options are. Because the true fact of the matter is that rate design is not always just a financial decision. It is a social and a community decision as well. You can have a lot of different rate plans that are going to get you the revenues that you need. The question becomes, what is the most fair, just, and reasonable plan? Well, the answer to that question is whatever you believe is the most fair, just, and reasonable plan. Furthermore, you can structure your finances to influence your rate plan accordingly. And I think that the city staff has done a very good job of doing that. So all of this factors into the ultimate rate decision that you're ultimately going to end up making. So with that in mind, let's start a little bit with the water and wastewater analysis. This chart right here is a chart that depicts what your current water and sewer rate structure is. A residential ratepayer who resides in the city of Goodyear pays two types of rates. They pay a minimum charge or an availability charge, as it's sometimes called, and then they pay a charge for every 1,000 gallons of service that they use. Here in the city of Goodyear, the vast majority of your residential ratepayers are 3/4-inch meters. They pay a minimum charge for water service of $18.54. They then pay a volumetric rate that is known as an inverted block rate. The more you use, the more you pay. The idea behind this rate is it is intended to encourage conservation by providing a financial disincentive for using greater amounts of water, while at the same time ensuring that those customers who use the least amount of water, who tend to be your lower income and your fixed income people, tend to be, not always, but tend to be, that they pay the lowest rate for that service. As you're about to see, that the rate plan that you put in effect back in 2015 has been extraordinarily successful in getting people to use water more prudently here in the city of Goodyear. But as you can see, you start off by paying $2.15 a 1,000 gallons, and eventually it goes all the way up to $10.31 per 1,000 gallons if you use above 30,000 gallons. Multifamily and commercial customers pay a slightly different inverted block rate, and irrigation customers pay a slightly higher rate. Wastewater side, basically the same thing. You pay a minimum charge of $23.78 and a volumetric rate of $6.51 based on a winter average. Now that's a lot of numbers. The question that people generally ask is, what do I really pay for service, and how does that compare to some of the other communities here in the valley? Doing rate comparisons is not always the most prudent thing to do because 30% of utilities in the United States right now charge rates that do not cover their costs. So just because another city's rates are lower than yours, it doesn't necessarily mean that they run a more efficient system or that their costs are lower. It might mean that they've decided to subsidize their water operation from their general fund. Keep this in mind. Your water and sewer operation is a nonprofit entity. You're not in this to make money. You're not making a profit. You don't have stockholders or dividends or anything like that. All you're asking your ratepayers to do is pay what it is costing you. And some cities have made the decision that their general fund is going to subsidize that. Well, you know, that does keep rates lower, but at the same time, every dollar that's used to subsidize a water fund is a dollar that's not available for streets or health care or other essential government services. This chart right here compares the City of Goodyear's rates for 7,000 gallons of water service and 5,000 gallons of wastewater service with other municipalities here in Maricopa County. As you can see right now, 7,000 gallons is about the average amount of gallons per month that a residential customer here in the city uses. Customer here pays $92.04 for that service. As you can see, you are a little higher than some of your neighbors, but you are also lower than your immediate neighbors, like Buckeye and Epcor. I do know, I've done some of the rates for some of the other cities, and I do know that some of those cities are constantly facing the same issues you are with regards to funding of long-term capital projects and the need to keep rates higher accordingly. Your rates are certainly not out of proportion with what people pay here in the state of Arizona, but at the same time, it must be recognized and acknowledged that your rates are at or above most of the other cities here in Maricopa County. Okay, when you do a long-term financial plan, generally what you do is you look and see where your utility is today as opposed to where you think it's going to be 5 or 10 years from now. Well, obviously, Goodyear is a high-growth community. As a result of that, you're going to have more accounts 5, 10 years from now than you have right now. That is a factor that needs to be taken into consideration when you look at a long-term rate plan. At present, you have approximately 20,282 water accounts. That's grown from about 16,000 4 years ago at the rate of about 800 accounts a year. We're anticipating that level of growth is going to continue over the next 5 to 10 years, and that by the year 2029, you're going to hit as many as 28,000 water accounts. You're going to see similar growth patterns on the wastewater utility also, because obviously the vast majority of new accounts you get are going to be both water and wastewater. So growth is an important component of a long-term financial plan. Well, with growth comes consumption. This chart right here shows how much water that you sold in the current year. It shows that in the current year, 2020, you sold about 2.7 billion gallons of water. That number has stayed pretty steady over the last 4 years, as you can see. Obviously, weather is a big factor. You know, in dry years, you're going to sell more water, and wet years, you're going to sell a little less water. But the general trend is that you're going to sell a little bit more water over the next 10 years. Well, the good news is that every new account is a new customer who buys water, and every person who buys water contributes to the city's utility system. So well-managed growth is very beneficial to a community. And I think that Goodyear is a textbook case of well-managed growth, both in Arizona and across the United States. Now, one thing about the water industry is it's a pretty funny business. You're in the business of producing a product. Water is a product. You're in the business of producing a product that you're trying to get your customers not to buy. The reason is that water is a precious and diminishing natural resource. There's only a certain amount of it out there. And so you want people to use water, but you want them to use it prudently. That was one of the big objectives that you had back in 2015 when we presented the last rate plan to you. And at that time, the council adopted a more aggressive conservation rate structure. Well, how did it do? Did it do its job? Well, this chart shows you that it most certainly did. In the year 2016, the average residential customer used about 7,860 gallons a month of service. That number has steadily fallen over the last 5 years, to the point here in the current year, the average residential customer uses 6,944 gallons a month. That is a drop of about 15 to 20% in usage. I think that's great because it means that people are using water much more prudently. Water is available for them if they need it, but at the same time, they have an incentive not to use it when they don't really need to use it. So you accomplished your objective in the last 5-year rate plan. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your operating costs. You know, we've talked about your customers and your volumes. Now let's talk about what it costs you to produce this service. Well, water's a business. Like any other business, costs go up over time. Cost of everything goes up 3% a year just due to inflation. Any well-designed and well-constructed long-term water utility financial plan has to take that very fundamental factor into consideration. And our plan has done that. We have developed, at least in the last study and modified for this study, a comprehensive rate model that takes every single line item of your budget and forecasts it out for 10 years based on a series of what we call accelerators. Those accelerators take into consideration factors such as inflation. And so we factor in the fact that inflation is going to impact your costs. We also factor in the fact that some costs, like insurance and energy costs, go up at rates higher than inflation. We also factor in the fact that some costs go up as accounts go up. And finally, we are factoring in the fact that there is going to be a limited number of additional personnel. If you're going to add 10,000 new accounts, you're probably going to have a couple more people. Not a whole lot of people, but obviously a few more, and that's factored into as well. And finally, you have a new surface water treatment plant that's going to come online, and that's factored into the model as well. But one of the biggest factors, if not the biggest factor, in this long-term financial plan is the capital improvement needs that you have for your system. It costs a lot of money to build a water system. It costs a lot of money to move water through the city of Goodyear from its source to the ultimate ratepayer's home. It costs a lot of money to develop a system that enables people anytime they want to be able to turn that tap on and have water come out of it. Somebody wants to get a drink of water at 3 o'clock in the morning, they turn that tap on, water comes out of it. Guess what? That costs a lot of money. And like any system assets, they wear out over time. You know, towers have to be replaced, lines have to be replaced, systems have to be overhauled. A well-managed system has to take all this into consideration. Now, I work for some cities, I'm not going to name them, but some of them have very, very low water rates. And they have very low water rates because they don't put any money into their system. And so they're playing Russian roulette with the future of their community because they could have a catastrophic failure, which could ultimately end up not having water be available for days at a time to their citizens. The city of Goodyear has always been very, very prudent in its expenditures and in investments in the capital structure needed to own, operate, and manage your water system. But that comes at a cost. This chart right here shows you that over the next 5 years, you're anticipated to spend as much as $143 million in repairing, replacing, overhauling, and expanding your water and sewer system. Now, the good news is that these are investments that are direct investments in the future of the city of Goodyear. While you're going to be asking your ratepayers to contribute more to the water and wastewater fund to fund these expenditures, the money's going right back into your streets and alleyways. It's going to benefit you, your children, your grandchildren, and maybe even your great-grandchildren. And so while it's never easy to ask ratepayers to pay this kind of money, it is money that is an investment in the future. This chart right here shows you what some of the primary projects are. About $40 million in water and about $102 million in wastewater. Well, in order to fund these projects, you're going to have to issue debt over the next 5 to 10 years. Obviously, you don't have $140 million sitting in the bank, do you, Doug? I don't think you do. So, as a result of that, you have to borrow money. This chart right here shows you that over the next 5 years, you're going to have to borrow as much as $170 million. Now, the reason why you're borrowing more money than the $140 million is that you're going to have continued capital expenditures beyond the 5-year period, and you have to periodically borrow. It makes sense to only borrow money every couple of years because of all the closing costs involved in all of that. So we're anticipating in the model and the financial plan impacts that you will be able to fully fund all of the capital improvement projects that you have identified. So, as a result, this chart right here shows you how your costs, your overall costs, are expected to increase in future years. In the year 2020, it's costing you approximately $32 million to run your water and sewer operation. By the year 2029, that amount is expected to hit almost $70 million. The bar chart right there is composed of several elements. The blue portion is operating costs, basic operating costs, as you expect, they're going to go up. But look at the red portion of the bar. That's the new debt that goes to fund the capital projects. You see how big a portion of the bar it becomes over the next 5 to 10 years? That's what your rate plan is going to be funding. So, it shouldn't be any great surprise to understand that if your costs are going up, and if you're going to be investing $140 to $170 million in your system, you're going to have to phase in a new rate structure that will enable you to fund those expenditures. We did a lot of work with city staff and with the committee to look at potential different alternative rate structures, and this is the rate structure that was ultimately settled on. As you can see, it is a 5-year plan with rate adjustments to be automatically implemented in January of each of the next 5 years. It shows a staged set of adjustments in the cap water charge, which is 95 cents right now, the water minimum charge, and the water volumetric rate. It also has more aggressive adjustments in the irrigation rate structure as well. I'm going to show you the rates first, and then I'll show you the more important chart, and that is what the impact is going to be on an average monthly bill. This right here is the wastewater rate structure. As you can see, the wastewater rate adjustments are slightly higher than the water adjustments because you're going to have to do more capital investment in the wastewater system over the next 5 to 10 years. So what does this mean in terms of what people pay? This chart right here is one of the most important charts in the entire presentation because this shows what the impact is going to be on your average ratepayer. Remember, your average residential ratepayer uses about 7,000 gallons of water service a month, and their winter average is about 5,000 gallons of wastewater. That person pays $98.69 for that service. Under this plan, their water and wastewater bill would go up 3 to 4% a year, each year for the next 5 years. In dollar numbers, that's about $4.17 in the first year, and about $4 to $5 a month each year after that. So your average bill of $98.69 would eventually hit $120 by January of 2025. Like I said, it's about a 3 to 4% annual adjustment. Obviously, if people use greater amounts of water, like 10,000 gallons or 20,000 gallons, the impact is a little bit greater, but the percentage is about the same. So, this rate plan that gets you $170 million of investment in your system over the next 5 years can be funded with annual rate adjustments of 3 to 4% a year on the water and wastewater side. It's never easy to ask people to pay more, but given the amount of investment that is necessary and the reward and return that will be given to the city, it's a fairly prudent amount. And it's less than the average because the nationwide average residential rate increase is 5 to 6% every year. This chart right here is a impact on the commercial side. Commercial ratepayers would see the same basic increase, about 3 to 4% a year. Commercial customers generally use a little bit more water than residential customers, so their dollar increase is greater, but the percentage increase is about the same. So for water and sewer, it's about 3 to 4% a year. So I'm done with the water and sewer side. Would you all like to ask questions about that before I go into solid waste?
Questions? Bill? Joe?
Debt service, what type of debt service are you looking at? Revenue, utility, bonds?
What type of debt service? This is the debt service that's paid for by the water and wastewater funds.
Okay, so you won't be using general obligation bonds, I assume?
Correct.
Okay. The reason why I ask that question is we have a tendency to use general obligations bond, or we have in the past, to put everybody's property tax, which, we have more than one water company here. The other question I have is, and I thought I was gonna see it, was what was the impact of the rate if that $7.5 million debt service that currently everybody in the city is paying, because we have multiple water companies. So we have people north of 10 that's subsidizing our water system. How would that impact that if it was in there, price-wise?
The $7.15 million is general obligation debt, so it is not in this rate study right here.
No, I understand that.
To take a look at what that is, the annual debt service on that is about $470,000 a year. How it would impact it would depend on how you went ahead and implemented it. If we were to put it purely on the volume rate, so leave the base the same, put it purely on the volume, it would impact the higher users the most. So your typical residential user would see an increase of about $2.50 a year, not a month. So a real small increase on that. Your high volume users would pay up the remaining portion of that. So it's about a 1 to 2% increase on the volume charge. If we were to go on to the base charge, in the first year you would have to do about a 10% increase on the base charge, which would raise it about $2 per month for every customer.
If you went on the volume, you're looking at a 1 or 2%. Correct?
Correct.
The only reason why I ask is, again, I know I'm on the minority on this part because we had voted earlier to put that in, even though I voted against it, is I'm a firm believer as an enterprise fund, we should be operating it solely as an enterprise fund, which means we cover all costs. The fact that we have multiple water companies here in the city, I have a problem subsidizing it because the ones north of 10 are actually for profit. It means you're not only paying for the cost, you're paying for a return on capital. So they're paying the entire boatload, and then you're asking them to subsidize, again, some small amount, and it's small amount, of what it costs us to operate our system. So because of that, I've got a problem not putting that in. And again, I know I'm in the minor on this, but what'll end up happening is, I may end up voting against the rate increase as a result, since it's not covering all its costs in my mind. I just wanted to see what the impact was. We're looking at 1 or 2% if it went on volume. Okay, thank you.
I'm smiling because we hear that every year, so
I know.
he still feels the same way. He's
I haven't
stubborn.
changed, I
Yeah,
haven't changed
yeah.
my mind. It's
Okay,
still
I
the
just
same.
want you to know I remember everything. Laura?
I have a question on the 7,000 gallon average use. And you said that's based on Goodyear's usage?
Correct.
Okay, so then that calculates that first tier, they use the 6,000 and then there's an additional fee. I do live north of the freeway and I did check my bill and we only have a $5,000 gallon limit before it goes up. So ours is a little higher, which I think is a positive thing. Looking at slide 15 for a minute, the various costs. When Javier opened up the presentation, he talked about reliability and safety, which are very essential to water industry for sure. And then the comment was, and then improvement. So I'm wondering, have we factored in the cost of increased technology? Have we factored in operational efficiencies into this budget? Is it sufficient enough to meet the changing needs?
Thank you for that question. The answer is essentially yes. I mean, all of our projects incorporate new way of doing things. The goal is always safety and reliability, but we don't neglect the fact that along the way you improve what you're doing. So yeah, technology, being smart is one of our, in fact, through my sales pitch, our mission is safety, reliability, and then improvement. Our vision is being smart, sustainable, and engaged. And so being smart is a key thing.
So are you saying it's an equal stool or leg of the three-legged stool? Because I kind of heard it, safety, reliability, and then improvement, which I think all needs to go together.
And actually, technology is a tool to achieve safety and reliability. So it is a tool. How we accomplish that in some cases is not necessarily something that we do once we've achieved safety and reliability.
I know we just authorized a big investment in the SCADA. So what other technology do you have in mind? I mean, for example, and I'm going to talk about conservation tonight because I did serve on that conservation committee and people are very interested in it. But we had talked about a pilot project with the down in Cantamia with the AMI and getting the collectors. And I don't believe that's gone forward. But sort of what is our vision for bringing technology more to the users and so that they can be engaged in their own water usage management?
Correct. And thank you for the question. Actually, we have a very small pilot that our conservation group is going to start moving forward. COVID-19 really got in the way of a lot of things. We have in the pilot is to prove the value of smart meters. And so they're not necessarily the smart meters that the system that we have in Canamia, that would be sort of a phase 2. We're going to work with really highly engaged citizens and actually prove the value of these smart meters. And then work, probably phase 2 is do it on a larger scale in Canamia. When we came to council a few weeks ago to install these meters that are AMI capable, our strategy is that if the other two prove their value, we would come in the future with an idea that would actually create those networks that allow us to bring that technology to the end user.
Okay, so you're telling me the innovations for the next 5 years then are budgeted, the technology innovations are also included in this budget?
And so the ultimate phase of implementation of the meters is not. The process of proving their value is.
Okay.
But again, please, I want Mayor and Council to understand that any safety and reliability are achieved in many, many different ways, and technology and improvements in technology are always available for us to use.
All right, thank you.
Sherry?
First of all, I want to thank you for your presentation and looking through it. I think you brought up a very good point with the graphs, and that's one concern when I see the graphs throughout. And I don't know if there's a way we can get the message out or we can note what is included for those other cities. Because my fear, my concern is someone's going to see that graph and see Peoria and say, well, they're a bigger city. Why? Exactly what you said. Why are they lower? So I don't know how to make sure that message is given to our citizens so that they don't automatically read it. Like you pointed out exactly that's what people sometimes go for and not see the background data. Mm-hmm. So if there's some way we could do that, and also if there's some way for some of these, and we've done it in the past, but maybe continue to tell the story, like when we're talking about these improvements, to explain what the SCADA system, explain what the smart meter is, and how it can save you money, and let our residents know that. And I think that's a you know, when we're raising your rates, if we say we're starting these technologies to save rates. I know you're not on our side of the water bill, but the last few years, or about the last year or so, I don't know when it came in, we started getting the graph so we could compare last year's water usage to this year's. And I know it's not quite up to the smart meter. I think that's a great idea, but I think that's a very easy tool. And if we can continue building on those type of tools, I think conservation is great, because we do, obviously up in Australia and south of I-10, it's very, very rocky and deserty, and the more tips and the more help we can get for our citizens to say, this is how you can save water, these are the best plants, this is what we can do, this is how we can use, reutilize the water, I think that would be a great idea. So I really do like the conservation. And is there any money there was a question here somewhere, is there any money built into these rate structure to go towards conservation plans specifically?
He's coming up. I see him smiling.
Again,
I have a smile, so I guess that's good.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
We've got dollars built in to continue to support the conservation efforts. And in fact, there's already some things that are after this COVID-19 shock that we're working on that include online classes and things of that sort that are already engaging our citizens. Additionally, you'll see more efforts in the near future, and certainly items in the next budget that specifically support conservation efforts.
I appreciate
Brandon,
that.
if you
Thank
could wait, I have a question on conservation. I'm going to call on you. I shouldn't be talking,
Call on
I
yourself.
wait to the last, but because of what you're talking about. So I've moved into an apartment. You turn on the water, and the time that you have to turn on that water until it gets warm or warmer is too long in my estimation. But they meet the requirement. And my heart aches when I see how much water I pour down that drain. I had them come in and fix mine extra hot, which they won't do most of it, way beyond what the gauge is. because I just couldn't stand it anymore. And I see all these apartment houses that are being built, and I think the minimum they have to have, the number is not good. I think that part of water needs to be investigated. It's a lot of water, not just a little bit. And I can tell you, it's just rampant through all of it. Some of them, and I know they pass their inspections and things, but in some cases, and I don't have any technical on this, but the flow of the water to the areas it has to go doesn't meet the need. So, you know, some other areas get hot water quicker, the other area doesn't. And I just think there's not a good balance. And I've come in and talked to the city manager about it because I get so upset, turn on the faucet, take a shower. And so it's nothing we can do as a city right now, but it certainly is something that needs to be studied, at least for the next time around. Thank you. Brandon?
Yeah, also, I do appreciate the presentation so far. I know we got a lot more still to go over. And I do agree with Sherry about the public communication. I don't want to be known as the city that has the largest water rates. So it's good to see the comparison and to understand more of the background around that. Maybe we're investing more right now as opposed to the other cities. And that's why, to Sherry's point, like Peoria and Avondale, for example, might be lower is because maybe they're not doing as much as we are with the infrastructure. So it is good to hear that it sounds like the 3 to 4% should keep up with our growth. And I guess to Joe's point, he's also including in the rate that we increased last year or so. Yeah.
No, I would just have a different perspective that it should be in there and it's not.
Okay. So it's, all right. Okay. Yeah, I just curious, just reiterating that. And then also the irrigation, the question I had too was, I saw in the beginning the tier 3 for irrigation. Our irrigation users, that would really just be like the couple golf courses that are south of the freeway. I'm trying to think other just pure irrigation users that we have that are now tier 3 users.
We have several larger water users that have a separate irrigation meter, and they do that so that they do not have to get charged the wastewater portion of it. So all of our city parks are on irrigation meters. A lot of apartment complexes put irrigation meters in. Most of our schools are on it, HOAs and so on. Those are the big users of irrigation meters.
Okay, so we'll see that all the HOAs will be at a higher level of tiers here really soon. And then also, so we might hear something about that in the future.
It's very consistent, the increases that we're proposing on here. And what the committee had recommended was to bring the irrigation rate from, I believe it's on there at 906, up to that top tier rate, which is $10.72. And that is one thing that we are recommending, that we do not make that change, basically because of the fact that it would hit very large users extremely hard. So just a handful of users, the cities, schools, HOAs, is who would get hit by it, all of whom would then turn around and pass it on to somebody else to pay for it. So, and then the main reason for the recommendation to go to that higher rate was to encourage conservation. And we feel we have better ways to work with those larger entities to encourage conservation.
Okay, so it will get ramped up, or you said it'll
Can
jump?
you go to the...
Which slide? I forget what slide that was at. I just wanted to see what that's going to look like.
On the bottom there is the irrigation rate. So we're currently at
Slide
757 up to 80,000 gallons, and then 871 after that. And you can see it ramps up
Okay.
right in line with everything else.
Okay, yeah, okay. So it'll ramp up as well. Okay, I'm just curious how it's going to look downstream. So, thank you.
And Joe?
You know, to piggyback on what Councilmember Loretano was mentioning, the toughest part about comparing rates is when you have a system that's mature and you're doing repair versus you got a system that is growing, you got to put all those lines in, and especially with a city where you had to build a water treatment facilities, you're comparing apples and oranges. And that's why it makes it very difficult to try to get that message across, say why your rate is here and why the other rates are over here, because we're a city that's putting in a lot of infrastructure and we're trying to maintain it. So I don't know how you do that to put it in English so that the public understands, the reason why those differences, other than, they're just going to say you're higher. But that's not necessarily the case when you look at an enterprise that's growing, and you've got all this infrastructure you got to put in. So I just throw that out there for anybody that's listening. It's just tough. It's apples and oranges to try to compare some of those costs.
Wally?
Well, a lot of us do conserve. I have a Rainbird Wi-Fi system that tells me if my sprinkler's not working right or I'm using too much water on my trees. And there's a lot, that's the norm now. People are wanting to save money and get smart. And every time you buy a new appliance, I have a new washer that's Wi-Fi, I have a new dryer that's Wi-Fi. I'm almost Wi-Fi. But it's just amazing what folks really are thinking about now because they want to save money and they want to be smart. And I think the majority of the people understand Goodyear is growing. And we are so blessed to be able to have the ability to have the infrastructure in place that we can grow, because that's what delays so many of our neighboring cities that do not have the water and do not have access to it. And we do have to pay to get that water, and we just really are doing the best we can do to be fair, but we have to provide them this service, and you have to pay for it. I'm north of, and I have Liberty, and I'm by myself, and I looked at my bill, and it was the minimum of everything because I don't use any water hardly. And I said, well, that's really good. But in my bill was a little, remember to conserve. There's always a notice to conserve water and use it wisely. And I don't see too many people anymore that wash off their patios or wash off their porches or wash down their driveways because they know water is so precious. And they try to conserve as best they can. And I think we're doing an amazing job to be able to do what we're doing. And we can't give them the water free, but we're being very prudent with the fees that we're charging and the costs that we're charging. And we are a relatively young city, and we have a lot of growth left. And I just hope that we're able to meet that need as it comes. So thank you for the plan. It's very understandable. I do agree with Joe, though. I don't like paying for the Southern water, Joe. I'm on your side now because I'm really looking at it. But I understand that. I hope that we get in the position where we won't have to do that, Doug, someday, that we'll have enough growth, perhaps in the southern area of Goodyear, that they can fund the entire thing themselves and not those of us that live north of I-10 who do not use Goodyear water at all. So that would be my hope if we could do that someday. Hi, Joe. But thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation.
Laura?
Well, the discussion of the HOA just made me think about how most Goodyear is in a HOA, and every year we get our HOA rates go up. And no doubt we're paying for water and things like that. So in terms of conservation and such, are we doing things within the city to work with HOAs to try to reduce their costs? And because otherwise you're going to pay more at home and you're going to pay more for your community as well.
Yes, and am I coming through? Hello? Yeah. The answer is yes, we are working with HOAs. In fact, we've got some triumphs that we could share with council on some significant savings. Canyon Trails did some work with us some time ago, and we've reached out to HOAs, again, not to use it as a justification. COVID-19 kind of got in the way of that in-person interaction with them. In fact, we've got, in the spirit of using smart technology and new software, that we make available to the HOAs in order for them to use to conserve their water better. The ultimate solution is really our requirements related to landscape. And the Conservation Committee brought up some great ideas that we are moving forward. That is sort of the silver bullet of conservation. Behavior is temporary, has to be managed, but things by design really are permanent, so.
Very good, thank you. And probably the next question I have is for Doug. Where are we on the city in terms of unpaid water bills, disconnects? I know that because of COVID, we put a suspension on things, and so what is our status now in terms of how users are able to pay for services?
I don't have exact numbers with me. Overall, we are really good with collections when it comes to water and so on. And even though we have not been shutting off water since COVID happened, what we're seeing is an increase of about 10% in the number of accounts that are past due. Most of those are only past due for 1 or 2 months, which means they then catch up. We've dug into it a little bit to see which ones have been past due for several months, and those are the ones then that have that systemic problem that we're going to have to address. But overall, the 10% increase, I want to say we're in the neighborhood of about 300 accounts a month that are past due is what we normally see. So we're only at the 330 or so. So we're not significantly higher when you look at, we got 20,000 some accounts. So we're doing pretty well.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Wally?
I just want to share that Pebble Creek just is finishing refurbishing and redesigning 18 holes on the Eagles Nest side of their golf course. And they have put in all smart controllers, all smart everything, just so that we can save energy, save water, save time, save the bills, and it's electricity and water. And I think the majority of the HOAs are always trying to figure out how to cut costs. And if it means a capital investment for them to lower the costs, they're going to do that. And the golf course that they redid was the original course when Pebble Creek first came in the 80s.
It's right behind my house. I
Right by
watched them
her
do it,
house.
yeah.
Well, it really looks nice now,
Yeah.
Mayor. It's beautiful. And they've totally redone it, and they figured it did cost a lot of money to do it, but in the long run, we as the homeowners, and we're paying the yearly dues or monthly dues, however they do it, we're going to reap in the end. And I think a lot of the golf courses are looking for better management for water and electricity to save money, because the industry has come so far, and they're so much better now than they were 10 years ago, I think.
Anything else? All right, you're on.
Okay, let's move to solid waste. This won't take all that long, but we wanted to provide you a little bit of background about how your solid waste costs are anticipated to change in the coming years. A couple of things to keep in mind when we talk about the city's solid waste utility. First of all, like many cities in Arizona, the city provides service only to residential customers. Commercial customers, for the most part, are served by private providers. Importantly, however, the city negotiated a new contract with RAD that was effective in July of 2019. This is a contract that's very beneficial to the city because it significantly lowered your costs. It leads to probably the best news of the presentation tonight, and that is it will give you the opportunity to pass through some of the cost savings from your successful negotiation to your ultimate ratepayers. Unlike the water and sewer utility, long-term debt is not really a factor in the solid waste utility. You don't have those large assets to invest in. All of your capital costs, to the extent that they exist, trucks, that kind of thing, are funded directly from the rates themselves. This chart right here is a depiction or a forecast of your costs over the next 5 years. They're broken down into costs for contained service and uncontained service. Uncontained service, of course, is your refuse and your other stuff that isn't actually put in the 95 or 65-gallon drums. It's just that's why they call it uncontained, I guess. Then, of course, you've got administration and customer service costs. You can see while your costs are trending up a little bit, right now you're in a very prudent position because the RAD new contract has lowered your costs from where they were. Your rates were originally put into effect to recover a higher amount than what you need right now. so you can scale back your rates a little bit. Bottom line is that we recommend right now that you reduce your monthly fee. Your monthly fee is $22.80. Under our calculations due primarily to the RAD contract, we recommend that you lower that rate by $3 a month. That's a 13% increase. Now, that's good, but in subsequent years, you're going to have to start gradually ratcheting up the rate again because your cost increases are going to continue. Solid waste is just like water, just like everything else. Costs go up gradually every year. So the bottom line, though, is that you can lower your rate today and it will gradually increase, but 5 years from now, the rate is projected to be pretty much the same as it is today. It's $22.80 today. We recommend taking it down to $19.80 and then eventually going up to $23.15. Now, there is a caveat to this, however. Some of your customers have more than one drum. If they've got an additional drum, they pay right now $6.26 for that. That's a little below cost. We would recommend taking the additional drum charge or the additional crate charge from $6.26 up to $7.50. That covers the cost of that additional container. So while your base charge would go down, your additional charge would go up a little bit. So what does that mean in terms of your costs? Well, this is a comparison of solid waste monthly charges for the city of Goodyear with your neighbors. As you can see, your solid waste charges compare very favorably, particularly the proposed rate of $19.80. You are still a little higher than some like Gilbert, but you're significantly lower than Phoenix and Mesa and Tempe and Glendale and some of these other cities. I will tell you that the national average is about $23 to $24 a month. So your charge of $19.80 would be significantly below the national average. So it's not often that I get to come before a city council and recommend a rate decrease, but this is one of those happy occasions. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about solid waste at this time.
Questions? Laura? That's right, I called you.
No mention of recycling. So what's the future of recycling and how does that factor in? Because I know the costs from that are fluid and changing.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Recycling had, even before COVID-19, had already been seeing some challenges. And certainly those challenges have not gone away. At this moment, as we had shared with council some weeks ago, the ability for RAD to recycle is intermittent. At this time, their facility is shut down. So it's really, there's still a lot of questions. And I think that the answers will be based on really focusing on those recycled materials that are really going to have a market. And so at some point in the future, the question will be is should we look at not if we recycle, but what we recycle. But it's a very volatile market at this point. Our contract is very protective of our interests, and so we really lose nothing if they cannot recycle, and gain something if they're able to very profitably market those products. And so there's still a lot of discussions ahead as to when the market really comes back to normal and we can start using the MRF again and start recycling some materials. You know, do we recycle glass in the future or not? Do we focus on cardboard instead, which is, there's a great market today. All great questions ahead.
Thank you.
Joe?
Did you ever think about, and again, I don't know what the upside or downside from a marketing standpoint is, blending that $19? So instead of dropping 3 and then raising it 4% the next year, you kind of smooth it out so there's really no impact over the next 4 or 5 years? Did you guys ever think about approaching that as opposed to a customer saying, oh, you saved me $3, then you turn around and raise it 4% the next year? You know what I mean?
We did look at that, and at the end of the day, one of the things that really drove us to doing the majority of it in this first year like this was the rate committee's suggestion that with COVID-19, with everything going on, they wanted to see as low of an increase as possible in year one. So giving all of that $3 decrease you can't even say decrease when you're talking rate studies. So giving that all in 1 year really helps to make sure that that first year increase overall on a bill is the least.
Okay, the only reason why I think about that is when it jumps to 4% the next year, you might hear from a few who goes, you gave it, and he who take it away, then you give it back or whatever. So, all right, I understand the logic there with COVID though. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Brandon?
No, it was a good presentation as well. This is just a clarifying question for people listening online as well. I assume that the additional container does not include the recycle. It's just second, just pure waste bin, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify. No, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you for coming today. Dan, it was interesting, and, oh, somebody has a question.
There's one more.
Oh, there's one more.
stormwater.
I'm so glad I do it all the time.
Okay.
Thank you, go ahead.
Okay, let's talk stormwater now. Stormwater is a fairly unique service because it is not so much a direct service of the city, but it is a vital service of the city. Because obviously you don't want to be in a city that has a great amount of stormwater. That can be very damaging to properties. The question, though, becomes, how do you charge for stormwater service? It's not like stormwater comes through a tap into your house. So how do you charge for it? Well, there's a couple of different ways of doing it. One way of doing it is you look at the amount of acreage a property has, and you base the charge on acreage. And that is the way that we're recommending doing it here in the city of Goodyear, at least initially. City of Goodyear does not have a stormwater fee at present. This is the development of a new fee in order to offset the cost of stormwater. In the past, stormwater costs used to be absorbed by the water and sewer utility. There wasn't a separate charge for stormwater. But in recent years, you're seeing more and more utilities around the United States separate stormwater into its own cost center. That's just simply because the cost of stormwater management has become so much more significant. And that's particularly true for a growing city like a Goodyear. But at the same time, you want to have a charge to be as just, reasonable, and fair as possible. So if you base it on acreage or property, you only do that for your commercial customers. For your residential customers, you have pretty much a flat fee, because the vast majority of your residential customers have square footages of between 7,500 and 10,000 square feet in their property. Now, look, you've got some that are very large, and you've got some that are very tiny, but the vast majority of them fall in that 7,500 to 10,000 square foot range. On the commercial side, you got a lot more variation. This chart right here gives you a little bit of background of the commercial businesses within the city of Goodyear right now. You have about 31,000 accounts. 30,941 of them are residential, and only about 523 are commercial. This chart right here spreads the number of properties or the number of commercial accounts by the acreage. As you can see, 246 of your properties are an acre or less. But you've got some that are over 100 acres. You have 5 that are between 50 and 100. You have 2 that are 100 to 150, and you have 2 that are 150 to 200 acres. So obviously, you have to have a charge that takes into consideration the fact that some commercial businesses are your mom and pop flower shops or your 7-Elevens, and others are your Amazons and your other gargantuan companies. So the best way to do it at this point is to do a charge per acre. This chart right here is a forecast of your stormwater costs over the next 5 years. It's based on data that was primarily put together by your operations and engineering consultant, Black & Veatch. In the current year, your stormwater cost of service is about $484,000. However, those costs are expected to go up very significantly in the next 5 years to $1.7 million by the year 2025. That's because you're anticipating putting in water quality compliance, system planning, and stormwater utility costs, but also because you're anticipating spending as much as $12 million on stormwater infrastructure. And that, of course, like everything else, is going to require new debt. And you can see your debt service is going to go from zero right now to $436,000 a year by the year 2025. So once again, you know these costs are going to occur over the next 5 years, so plan for it now. So what we recommend is that you set a uniform monthly residential fee. You also set a commercial fee based on acres of total property. Now, some cities charge for stormwater a little bit differently. They charge based on a concept known as impervious surface area. In other words, it's not just the raw acreage of a property, but is the amount of actual impervious surface area, or, you know, asphalt, concrete, rooftops, kind of stuff that stormwater bounces off. The city right now does not really have sufficient data to set a charge by impervious surface area. We're hoping that in the next couple of years you develop that. And we do think that if you do develop that in the next couple of years, you should consider at some point in the future transferring your commercial accounts to a charge per impervious surface area. But here is the bottom line. We recommend initially, as of January 2021, setting a residential stormwater fee of $1 a month and a commercial fee per acre of $4 per acre. Now, if you think about that, that makes intrinsic sense because your average residential property is about 1/4 of an acre. So guess what? A per acre charge should be 4 times the residential acre, or $4 a month. So if it's $4 per acre, you can see that if you have a 1 acre property, it would be $4 a month. But if you have a 10 acre property, it would be $40 a month. If you have a 100 acre property, it would be $400 a month. But if you have a 100 acre property, you're generating an awful lot of stormwater. And so for that reason, the charge would be higher. We recommend that in January 22, that fee go to $2 a month for residential. In 2023, it go to $2.50 a month. And in 2025, it go to $3.50 a month, with a proportionate increase on the non-residential or commercial fee per acreage. Now, how does this compare to some of your neighbors? Well, right now, some of your neighbors don't have a stormwater fee. I believe that is going to change. I think it already should change, to tell you the truth. But some of your neighbors have a fee. Avondale has a $1 fee. Peoria has a $1.25. Scottsdale has a $4 fee right now. So your fee of $1 is obviously higher than some who don't have any fee, but it's significantly lower than others. I will tell you that nationwide, the average stormwater fee is between $3 and $7 a month for your residential fee. So the $1 fee that you're being asked to implement for your residential ratepayers is significantly below the nationwide average at present. So before I answer questions about about stormwater, I just wanted to present this chart right here that kind of summarizes everything we've talked about tonight. Right now, a customer who uses 7,000 gallons of water and 5,000 gallons of wastewater pays a combined total of water, wastewater, solid waste, and stormwater of $121.49 a month. Under this plan, their monthly bill would go up by $2.17 a month because it goes up a little more for water and sewer, goes up a little more for stormwater, but it comes down for solid waste. And in subsequent months, it would go up by about $5 to $6 a month each year for the next 4 years after that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any final questions you may have at this time.
Sherry?
Okay, for the stormwater, if we break it out separate now, where was it before that it was tied in paying for things? What category would it have been in before?
As in where it was paid for?
Yeah, like how do
Okay.
we, what bucket did we pay for it out of before?
A large portion of the operational, the regulatory stuff comes out of the wastewater fund. And then a lot of the capital projects, like what we saw at the Bullard Wash and so on, comes out of the general fund.
Okay, so this would be an enterprise fund itself,
Correct. This would be set up as an enterprise fund.
and then would bill both north and south of I-10 this amount?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's one of the most difficult things that we have to look at with the implementation. And one of the things that council will see in the next month is a stormwater ordinance. But the difficult piece is those commercial businesses that currently do not have a sanitation water or wastewater account with the city that are north of I-10, of incorporating them into our billing system.
And then I guess for the stormwater, if it ever rains again, then we need this. Like in Estrella, it all goes down to the washes and it goes down. Where does the stormwater, I guess that might be something to help the public see how the city is involved in that portion, because they're going to say it just goes to the desert. Why are you charging me? Does that make sense?
Yes, and I can have Javier answer.
He looks
where
like he's
it
all ready
goes.
to come up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So, as I explained, when I talked about the stormwater, there's the on-site, like HOAs, water is retained there. But a lot of the stormwater is collected at citywide public systems and essentially in areas south of Highway 10, all that flow ends up in the river.
Yeah.
Down Buller Wash. It actually even comes up from up north into Buller Wash and ends up in the river. So there's a lot of infrastructure that's in place in order to make it do that.
Thank you. I think that's another education piece. We just got to let people know. Thanks.
Bill? You don't have it now. Brandon?
This is for Javier as well. So yeah, so just to clarify, so you said we do collect the stormwater that's north of the freeway as well. And then the city, we're still looking at opportunities to do something with that, reach or collect as much stormwater as possible for, I don't know, recharging or other things that we might want to do.
Yeah, and that's this typical question in Arizona, what do you do with that stormwater? Why are we losing the possibility or the opportunity of capturing it? Capturing stormwater requires building infrastructure. And the question is there a return on our investment for that infrastructure? Because it just doesn't rain that much here. We actually, from a regulatory perspective, we get some incidental credits from that as a recharge.
Okay. Yeah, it just goes back to, I know we had all the water running through Pebble Creek at one point. I didn't know if we had any infrastructure set up near the river where we divert any stormwater coming off and it goes directly to our wastewater treatment facility. Or I'm just curious what infrastructure we don't have or do have, and if you said, it sounds like we're going to need to have some in there.
Yeah. For example, if you wanted to capture all the water from Buller Wash into our water reclamation facility, that would require us to be able to build the infrastructure that takes it there. And then looking at the treatment process itself, that's not designed to do that.
Yeah.
And so the question always is, do we do all that for the occasional rain?
Your return on investment, are we going to get that much rain to make it worth it?
There's been a little rain.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious how people see that it is a north and south. It's everybody, stormwater. We need that infrastructure for the whole city.
Yeah, the whole basin flows
to
southwest.
us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
So
you.
actually, we pay less by doing what we did at Pebble Creek or the Bullard Wash than we would if we set up a real stormwater. Right?
Yeah, there's
the
really not
infrastructure.
a lot
I mean,
of benefit and long-term return on that investment, yes.
Molly?
So when the stormwater comes through Pebble Creek, Brandon, it's full of pesticides and everything else from all of the farmers because it's coming from way, 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 way away. And when it comes into Pebble Creek, it just runs right through Pebble Creek and then goes to the big drain that goes into Rio Paseo. And then it just keeps going. So we don't want to use that water ourselves in Pebble Creek. We just try to get it out so we're not marooned again. We just want to keep it. We just want to keep it flowing on down the river.
Yeah. I mean, it could be used for irrigation or something like that potentially, but I don't
Well,
want
we'd
I
have
don't
to
want
treat
I don't
it.
want my kids playing in it.
Yeah,
so.
we'd have to treat it, and we can't afford it. I mean, we'd have to put in a water treatment plant in Pebble Creek just to be able to do that, because that's not good water. And a lot of times it's full of debris and things that you don't even want to see or
Truly.
talk about. So,
Yes, Laura?
Well, I know that stormwater is highly regulated and that the fines can be pretty tremendous for those. And so to Wally's point about the water, I mean, aren't there sort of, I guess, some sort of pollution initiatives or things that we have to do to mitigate the water or to keep it out of our water system or the rivers? Or, I mean, there's something that we are tasked to do.
Correct. The stormwater program has different elements, and we're focusing in this presentation on the operations, the capital needs, and so on. When ultimately, just like with other utilities, our goal is to meet compliance. And so, yes, annually we submit a report to the state that, in essence, describes all of our system and all the things that we do, and in order to meet the regulatory compliance that is in place when it comes to stormwater. So it's just as, I wouldn't say maybe not just as regulator as water is, but certainly there's quite a bit of oversight from regulators.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? You have more to go? Thank you.
A little bit more left.
The very last chart is your non-rate fees. Like all utilities, you have charges for special services that you provide to your customers and your ratepayers. Things like security deposits, new account activation fees, disconnection notices, that kind of thing. As part of this analysis, we took a look at the costs that the city incurs in providing each of these services, and we recommended a fee that eventually will enable you to recover all the costs that the city does incur in providing each of these services. You know, it's a pretty fair amount of revenue that you get each year as a result of these different fees. It also ensures that your current customers are not subsidizing those who get disconnection notices or who have turn-offs or turn-ons or that kind of thing. This is a common thing, and that revenue helps keep your rates as low as possible. So we looked at your current fees, and our proposed fees are based for the most part on your costs. We also made a couple of judgment calls to ensure that the cost or the fee increases were not disproportionate, or that they were phased in over a number of years to ensure that there wouldn't be too much sticker shock on the charge itself. But we do recommend that you establish and that you adopt this new set of charges for your non-rate fees as well. So with that, I really conclude all my prepared remarks. So once again, I just want to emphasize that there is a lot of information here, a lot for you to go over. I'm happy to answer any questions you all have at any future time, and I look forward to working with you as we go through the remainder of the process. And that, I guess I'll turn it back over to Doug.
Just to wrap up, we did the citizen rate comments from the beginning, and you saw how we addressed all of those through here. We had the specific discussion on the Tier 3 rate as well on the for the conservation and how we will not be recommending it. It is included in the rate study. In a second, I'll talk about next steps and why we've kept it like that. And another thing that is in the rate study, and we're going to keep it that way, but our intent is a little different, is on the stormwater utility. We do plan on putting in a cap where once you get to 10 acres, that's the maximum amount you would pay. The reason for that, there are a lot of churches with a lot of land, just a lot of parks, schools, different things that have a lot of land that is, we talked about having impervious surfaces, but we don't have that data right now. So a lot of land and the water really stays on there. So we want to make sure that nobody is harmed and hit really hard right out of the gate until we have more data. So we will be proposing a cap on that. The rate study, though, does include the larger one. When we actually come to adoption, you'll see some of these changes for it. With that, before I go into next steps, are there any other questions or discussion amongst the council?
I think they've asked all their questions.
Okay. Next steps, at the next council meeting on the 26th, council will be asked to adopt a notice of intent to increase water and wastewater rates. This is only water and wastewater rates, and it's per state statutes. When we adopt the notice of intent, the rates that are attached to that will be the maximum rate that can be charged. So when we come forward, we could have lower rates, but we cannot increase what will be adopted next week. What is adopted next week? It'll have the rates, it'll have the rate study. Again, all that is being adopted is that notice of intent, which starts the public process. Then in the months of November and December, that's where the public outreach will occur. From what Councilmember Loretano said, and Hampton and Pizzillo followed it up on, really educating the public on what it is that's in the rate study, what it is that the system does. We're going to be doing mailers, email, direct mail, possibly bill inserts, a lot of social media, potentially an open house. We'll have a website set up so that people can be directed to there, and we can start telling the story on the website and through social media. So we plan on really actively using November and December to make sure that everybody is aware of the what and the why of this. Other legal steps then are in December 9th is when we'll actually post that notice of intent that you're going to adopt in the paper. On January 4th, we'll have a public hearing and ask the council adopt the rates at that time. The rates then go into effect 30 days later. So the first year of the rate increase will actually go into effect in February, with subsequent rate increases January, as they have been in the past.
Joe?
Just a quick question. When it comes to voting on the rate increase, will they be all as one package, water, sewer, wastewater, or would they be separate votes for each one, water, wastewater?
At this time, the intent is all one resolution to adopt all of the rates.
Okay. The only reason why I ask is I won't be in favor of the water, and you know my reason why. I have no problem with the others, but if they're all one lump, then I'd have to vote no for the entire package.
Okay, good to know.
Any other questions?
That is all we have,
All right. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Good information. Thank
and I
you.
apologize for the time.
The next item is an update on the Goodyear Recreation Campus. Parks and Recreation Director Nathan Torres, Parks and Recreation Manager Davis Hyde, and the Recreation Superintendent Mike Beadle will present.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are excited to be before you this evening to provide a highly anticipated update on the Recreation Campus, and including a sneak peek that Mike will provide. In addition, we will present recommended user fees for the Recreation and Aquatic Center, as well as department-wide amenity rentals. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce David Side. He's our Recreation Manager. David. We also have Mike Beadle. He is our Recreation Superintendent. And Mike serves as our operational PM for the Recreation Campus project. And Mike will also be overseeing the campus once it opens. These are the two subject matter experts that you'll be hearing from this evening. In addition, in the bullpen behind me, we have members of actually a member of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. We actually have our commission chair, Raquel Landfield. And the commission actually recommended unanimously bringing the fees that you'll be reviewing tonight forward for your consideration. We are also joined by Tony Humphrey. He's our engineering construction manager PM. And then, of course, probably the most important person in the room, our budget and finance manager, Lori Wingenroth. And with that, we'll jump right in with an update on the Recreation Campus. So the timeline before you demonstrates what led us to where we are today, preparing to open a facility that is truly like no other, the Goodyear Recreation Campus. And it's like no other because uniquely it was designed by the community, for the community, and will be provided to the community. So it's designed by the community for the community, what truly makes this project special. This effort, along with Mayor and Council's vision for this community asset, is based on the following principle. It's a place for all ages, all abilities, and all interests. And I'm sure you'll see tonight that we've accomplished that. One final note to add, the project is on time and on track and on budget. And we're planning for a summer opening of 2021. And without further ado, we're going to turn it over to Mike. He's going to provide some great imagery. And these are actual fly-through videos. This is what you can expect once we open doors at the rec campus, almost down to the colors in the videos. So go ahead and turn it over to Mike.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to come before you tonight. I am very excited. We will be taking a look at a virtual tour. So I'll be your virtual tour guide through the Recreation Center and Aquatics facility. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. So as you can see, we're going to come into the main entry of the Recreation Center. Off to the right, you'll see our teen activity space. So there will be a free area for the public, so teens can come in after school and do homework, play games, socialize with their friends, and we have a really fun e-gaming opportunity for them as well in there. Beyond that, we have our membership, our pass desk, and kind of a sneak peek into the facility. So you'll see we've got a hallway down to our aquatics area, and then we also have a peek into our multi-purpose room. So we'll have 2 multi-purpose rooms, and then beyond that, one larger banquet room. Off to the left, you'll see as we go by our lockers, and then we have the big reveal into our multi-court gymnasium. So this court will be a multi-sport court. It won't just be a wooden floor basketball court. We're going to do pickleball. We're going to do volleyball. We'll have basketball on those courts. So a lot of different amenities or activities that'll happen in that space. As we go upstairs, this is our fitness level, and the intent and the design intent for this facility is baseline introductory fitness amenities and activities in this space. So we'll have basic treadmills, ellipticals, and bikes. We'll have basic selectorized weight equipment, but this space was not intended to compete with private providers. This is really just an introductory space. And I see Wally smiling. The favorite part, I think, of the facility is the walking track. So you get a nice view of the walk around the second floor walking track. This is going to be an amazing feature for that building as well. As we transition outside, you can see a kind of a flyover view of our aquatics facility. We will have 2 pools in this facility. We'll have a competition pool, and then as you can see on the left side, our play pool or activity pool. So you'll get a kind of a nice view of the entry as we come into the entrance of the aquatics facility. And once you get inside the gates, you'll see we have a lot of lounging areas, a lot of seating for families and kids. We have a lot of shade. That's a #1 request for pools out in the summer is, you know, it's nice to be in the water, but once you get out in the water, you definitely want to be in the shade. But this features a 0 depth entry you'll see on the right, and kind of a toddler play structure in the water. We will have a lazy river with a couple of water features as well. And then off to the left, you can kind of see our dual lane slide. So we've got a lot of fun amenities for the play pool. We're really excited about that one. And then we transition over to our competition pool. And this will be used for not just swimming competitions, but we'll have swim lessons, we'll have open swim. We've got a couple of diving boards where kids will be able to play during open swim as well. So that's an overview of the rec center and the aquatics facility. I hope you enjoyed the tour. It was a quick snapshot for you, but we're very excited for what's coming next, and we can't wait for this thing to get built.
Thank you, Mike. So are we.
All right, next transitioning over, so you got to see some of the renderings. Now I'm gonna take you through some of the actual construction project updates. So you'll see a few pictures and slides of, you know, you got to see the virtual and now you're seeing how it's actually constructed. So we are absolutely under construction at this point. The Recreation Center, we're finishing up some of the masonry work on the building. They're doing some of the steel structure now as well. In the aquatics facility, we have concrete work going for the competition pool, and they're about ready to pour the concrete for the play pool as well. Within the park, you'll see if you drive by, there's grass on the field, so they just laid the sod. The lights are up. It's getting really close. We're excited. They're doing some of the fencing and the backstops for the baseball fields, and they're going to start doing some more sidewalks and connectivity over the next couple of months. So overall, construction is going really well. We are at about 40% completion for the project, and we just can't wait to see the public opening up here next summer. And as I finish up with the construction updates, I am going to transition it over to David Side to talk a little bit more about our fees.
Great, thank you, Mike. Good evening, everyone. Before we move on to tonight's fee discussion, I want to take a moment and explain how this fee discussion differs from the past fee discussion that was held back in 2018 related to programs. A key slide from that discussion is what is displayed here. In 2016, the city partnered with the Marvin Andrews Fellowship from Arizona State University to study the various recreation program fees that the city collects. This study focused on registration-based recreation programs and became the foundation for the city's updated fee philosophy. Staff presented the findings to council, and the updated fee philosophy was ultimately approved in January of 2018. The new fee philosophy included a pyramid-based program costing model. It placed various programs within cost recovery ranges on the pyramid. It clearly defined a universal costing formula, and it also delegated authority to the Parks Department to apply various discounts and surcharges. Tonight's discussion will focus on facility use fees, i.e. the recreation center and the aquatics facility, and system-wide facility rental fees. I also want to take a moment and explain how tonight's fee discussion fits within the city's overall fee and cost recovery review that is currently underway. Updating user fees and cost allocation is called for in the city's financial policies. The fee recommendations discussed today are derived from the underway cost allocation and user fee study that the city began in 2019. The cost allocation portion of the project was completed and reflected in the adopted FY21 budget. However, workloads in the development areas, as well as the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, caused delays in the timelines for completing the user fee portion of the citywide study. The findings, related policy discussions, along with council outreach and user fee adoption will be multi-phased and in alignment with the FY22 budget process timeline. The key exception is Parks and Recreation, where fees need to be in place for the new recreation campus that will be opening in late spring of 2021. The fees we're discussing tonight are the result of numerous outreach efforts within the community, as well as a comprehensive analysis of valley-wide benchmark cities. Various stakeholders and user groups within Goodyear were also engaged and given the opportunity to provide feedback to tonight's fee recommendations. Following the various public outreach efforts, the analysis of similar fees in other valley cities, and the inclusion in the city's user fee and cost recovery analysis, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission was presented with and unanimously approved staff bringing tonight's fee recommendations forward for council consideration. And with that, I will turn the presentation back over to Mike, who will take us through a sampling of the proposed fees.
Thank you, Dave. Tonight I'm going to take you through a few slides that outline the recommendations for fees and passes related to the new recreation campus. Additionally, a little bit later, we will talk about our department-wide rental fees for new and existing amenities, but for now, we're going to focus on the recreation campus fees. As you can see on the slide before you, we have listed a sampling of the passes for the facility. Within your car and fee packet, you can find a full listing of all of our fees, but we did want to take the opportunity to review a few of the key fees for you in the presentation tonight. I am going to take a moment to help you navigate the slide. There is a lot of data and information on the slide, so I'll kind of take you through that. And these slides really throughout the presentation are pretty consistent in terms of layout, so once we kind of walk through it, you should have it for the rest of the way. So starting on the top right, we have what is the fee type that we're going to be discussing on the slide. So the Recreation and Aquatic Center passes is what we're going to discuss first. Below that is our estimated cost recovery. And what we did there was provide a range of cost recovery. So the 15% cost recovery is a conservative estimate for cost recovery, and 30% is a more moderate estimate at our cost recovery. This applies to all of the revenues, so the past revenue and the facility revenue rental for the Recreation and Aquatic Center. Beyond that is the revenue estimate, and that revenue estimate is just for what's outlined on this slide. So we are anticipating $225,000 to $450,000 in estimates for just our past sales for the Recreation and Aquatic Center. Going kind of down through the slide, we have our past types outlined. Beyond that, we have our benchmark average. So this is our Valley benchmarks.
Joe has a question.
Oh, sure.
Can you just explain, Recreation and Aquatic Center passes, what does the recreation get you? What are you paying for the recreation? Aquatics, I understand that, that's the pool, I assume. What gets you the recreation access?
Sure. So the Recreation and Aquatic Center, they're adjoining facilities, and so the passes that are before you tonight are for access to both the Aquatic Center and the Recreation Center. So depending on the time of year, if you come into the facility, you'll have access to the basketball courts, the multi-purpose rooms, the second-level fitness area, the walking track, of course, and then you'll also have access outside of the pool, depending on the time of year. In the winter months, we'll have lap swim and things, but during the summer, we'll have expanded open swim opportunities so the public can come in and enjoy the facilities and amenities within that.
So these are fees to get into the facility?
These are fees to get into the facility, correct?
Is this for unlimited use?
Yes, depending on the pass type, yes, it is unlimited use.
You
So
do an annual pass, you can go in.
you can go in as many times.
As many times as you want to the pool and walk around or whatever.
Yep, that is correct. So yeah, for our day pass,
Okay,
that would be.
sign me up. I'm ready.
I know we have a lot of the community is very excited. I've heard that quite a few
Oh, they can
times.
hardly wait.
We can't wait. So we're really excited to show these fees
And
tonight.
these things are in line with what some of the other recreation centers charge, so we are certainly within the ballpark. And I think these are very reasonable fees, especially for a family, because if just the youth comes in, he can get his own or her own pass by herself. But if the whole family comes, the youth is included in the $600, and they can come in all the time, every day, just like that if they have the pass for the family. So
Yep, that's absolutely correct.
it's wonderful because we're trying to help families
Absolutely.
utilize what we have for them reasonably.
Yep, and you definitely hit right on our next point. The philosophy that we had when we developed these fees was, these are introductory level amenities within this facility, and we wanted to price it to be as affordable as possible for our community so they could come in and enjoy these amenities, enjoy the facilities without paying a big premium for those costs. So we made it as affordable as residents as possible, and then the non-residents obviously have a little bit higher fee.
We have one more before you go, Bill.
Michael, while you're on fees, I guess. So the excitement is definitely growing. There's no question about it. A friend of mine is a single mom, 2 kids, super excited about the recreation campus. Would love to take her kids there regularly, I'm assuming, based on our conversations. There's no way in the world she can afford $600 for a mom and 2 kids. She doesn't have $600 for rent. So is there a provision is there a way that we're going to be able to get those types of challenges addressed?
Yep,
The scholarship program.
absolutely.
Scholarships,
Yep, Mayor Lord hit it right on the head. So we do have, we have a free area, so we do have the teen activity area that won't cost a fee to get in. It's free and accessible to anybody in the public. And then additionally, we do have a pretty robust scholarship program. So for families in need, so single parents, low-income families, if they qualify for the scholarship program, they can either offset part or sometimes all of the fee for access. So again, making it as affordable as possible and making sure we're not denying anybody access to the facility and to the amenity.
We've always had some scholarship programs connected with it, so this is not anything new, and they just built upon this. So,
Right, yeah, these fees are obviously much
yeah,
higher than
I-
anything we've ever charged, so making sure that they were accessible.
no, that's a good question.
Absolutely. Great question. Thank you.
Sherry?
Vice Mayor Stitt.
I have a question on how, like, the passes and the punch are going to work. Is this going to be digital? Because I know when my kids were younger, giving them a punch card, that would be gone. How's that all going to work?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Loretano. Absolutely. So we call it a punch pass, but that's kind of an old school term. Back in the day, you'd get, your
Yeah.
actual punch card and
I
you'd
recognize that.
punch it and then you'd go on. So with the implementation of our new recreation software, which I'm very excited about, everything will be digital. So your pass will be on a barcode scanner. It's actually touchless. So we're not actually handling cards or things. It'll be right on their phone. So they'll just scan in. And if they have a punch pass associated with their account, it'll just take one pass or one instance away from that punch pass, and they'll be able to see how many they have left. So that way we're not trying to keep track of cards and punches and all of those different things.
Okay, that's cool. Good.
Brandon?
No, good. I also appreciate Bill's topic as well about who can use it, because to his point, yeah, this is a lot different than our La Loma pool and our fees over there as well. So, and then did you want to mention that I do appreciate you saying that the youth was free, so I was hit on that again, just for that one room in the front. And then did you define what a family, how many people in a family? Is it
Yeah,
is
it's
it one
four-
to however many kids I have?
Yep, great question. It's 2 adults and 2 children is what we're defining as a family. And then if they wanted to add it, it would just be added at the same rate that we're adding a youth pass or another pass to the account.
Okay,
So that would be for a family of 4 in the annual pass.
so a family of 5 would be 600 plus another 200.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Sure.
And the other question I would have, is this going to be a lump sum, or is there a payment plan, like a credit, which makes it easier for people to afford if it's stretched out over a year, than $600? So is that an option?
Yep, great question. Thank you, Councilmember Loretano. Yes, we will have a lot of different options. We'll have a monthly recurring pass, so they can just have it charged per month, and they go out. The nice thing for us, again, we're not trying to compete with those private providers, so there's no fees for cancellation, there's no sign-up fees, there's none of those things. If you kind of go to those private fitness places, it's like, here's an incentive to sign up, but then you're going to get charged this deposit or this other fee. For us, it's sign up anytime, cancel anytime. We just want you to come and enjoy the amenity as a community.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other? He didn't tell me he had to. I looked right at him. Brandon, do you have a question? Joe's worried about that.
No, I was just curious. I thought it was more than enough kids, or I thought it was as many people he has in your family. I was curious. It's just getting lots more expensive the more kids you have, but I guess that makes sense because there are more users that are there as well. So, all right, I was just curious. I got to pick 2 of my 2 favorite kids. So, all right, thank you. Yeah.
Are we all set? Go ahead.
All set, all right. So next, I would like to review with you the rentals within the facilities. So as with passes, these were developed for community benefit, and we tried to keep the rate as affordable as possible for residents, and then those non-residents are going to pay a slightly higher fee. We'll take you through the slide, but the layout again is very similar. So we're talking about the Rec and Aquatic Center rentals fees. The cost recovery, again, is 15 to 30%. That's overall for the passes and facilities compared to the expenditures to run those facilities. So the range stays the same there. And then our conservative estimate for revenue from just rentals is $90,000 annually to a more moderate estimate, which would be about $180,000 annually. The layout, again, is really similar. So we have our facility listed here, and then all of these rates are per hour. And then we have our Valley Benchmark average. So we went out and looked at all of the other Valley Benchmark facilities and grabbed the benchmark from there. And then you'll see our resident rate, our non-resident rate, and then we have a new category here for organized use. And so organized use for us is defined as non-Goodyear-based groups that are collecting fees to participate. So Goodyear-based groups shall be charged the resident rate unless the rental is for commercial purposes. So if, an example of that, if Goodyear Little League was coming and they wanted to do their Goodyear Little League draft in our multi-purpose room, they would be charged the resident rate because they're not charging a fee to get in to use one of the facilities. They're just utilizing the group as a Goodyear-based organization. So again, what we feel is a very good rate for a lot of those Goodyear-based residents. Really, the only time that organized use is going to come into play is if a tournament promoter for an adult softball tournament came in and they weren't serving Goodyear residents, they were just bringing in tournament teams and wanted to utilize the facility. That's when they would fall under that organized use rate. Again, most of those Goodyear-based groups are going to fall into the much more affordable fee.
Wally?
Okay, so you just piqued my interest. So the Kiwanis is going to sponsor a swim day. Are they an organized fee or are they a resident fee? Or how are you going to do that? Because you know they do it every year.
Absolutely. Yep. And so if
And they're a nonprofit.
Yep, if they're a nonprofit and they are serving the residents of Goodyear, they're going to receive the resident rate
Perfect.
for that rental. Yeah. So again, this fee and our definition is very much slanted towards the benefit of those who are serving Goodyear residents. That was our goal in all of this. Is the EYSs of the world, the Goodyear Little Leagues, they partner with us and they're putting on programs for our residents, and so we're not going to penalize them and put them in the highest price category because they're serving our residents just like we do with our program. So they're going to fall in the most affordable rate possible.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Laura?
Do these multi-purpose room fees include tables, chairs, setup, and all of that? Are they allowed to bring food in?
Yes, yep, so absolutely, that's a great question. Thank you, Councilmember Kano. So this fee and all of our facility rental fees, including our park fees, we'll talk about a little bit later, include 100% of our direct costs recovered. So it takes care of the table setups, the staffing required, the cleanup after, all of those things are all included, and that's why it's reflected in those fees. So an example of that would be like our competition pool private rentals. So that's $250. And the reason for that is because there are several staffing requirements for a pool. So if they're going to rent the pool, they can't just rent the pool and say, we're going to guard it on our own, or we're going to provide our lifeguards, our management staff to make sure that the rental is safe. And so that's why that fee is a little bit higher, because we have to recover those costs for the hourly rate for all those lifeguards and the pool manager.
Brandon?
I just want to clarify as well. So it's probably varies, but is it per hour, all of these? Oh, I just see over there. Never mind, per hour. How many Ramadas are there?
For Ramadas in the park, we have
The pool Ramadas, I mean?
Oh, sorry. Yes, the pool Ramadas. We have 4 pool Ramadas within the facility, and so they can serve about 25 people each. And so they would be able to reserve that for a resident rate of $50 per hour.
Okay, so you could do a pool birthday party.
Yeah.
Type of thing there.
Yeah, and the goal with the pool Ramadas, we were really intentional with that because we were looking at, most families aren't going to be able to rent the entire play pool for $450 an hour. If they want exclusive use and nobody else can enter the facility, then they can have that for $450 an hour. And again, that's tied back to, it takes a lot of lifeguards to guard the lazy river and the zero depth entry and the slides and those things. So there's a large cost there. But a great alternative is if you don't need exclusive use of the facility and other families and people can be utilizing the facility at the time, you can rent a pool Ramada and you can bring in your cake and your ice cream and have your little party under the Ramada without blocking out the use for the rest of it, and then it's a much more affordable rate for people as well, so they can bring in their birthday party.
And does that include, so if I rent the large room and I have how many people there, that includes them coming into the building, or they don't have to be members to get in and use
Currently, they would have to either purchase the passes or be a member of the facility in order to utilize it. So so this is just for the space itself.
Okay, so if I have a birthday party, they all have to be members or by the day pass. That's included in the cost of coming and using it. Right. Okay, that's a good point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Okay, and with that, I will pass it back to Dave to talk about our overall revenue projections.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. This summary slides details the overall revenue and cost recovery projections for the Recreation Center and Aquatics Facility. The city's investment in these services will provide numerous opportunities for all ages and abilities to participate in active and healthy lifestyle activities. These facilities will have large and lasting impacts on the community at a very affordable cost to the user. As you can see, the combined revenue equates to a 15% cost recovery on the conservative end and a 30% cost recovery on the more moderate end. Before moving on to the system-wide facility rental fees, This is a natural stopping point to answer any additional questions you may have and provide any feedback and gauge consensus on the proposed facility use fees before you.
Mayor?
Sorry, I was reading the figure.
I just,
Sherry?
I just have one more question, because what Brandon brought up, something I kind of thought about. If you're renting the whole pool, I guess I want to be careful that we're not renting it out to groups and not letting our residents in. You know what, I'm sure you have a fail-safe on dates and times that you'd rent it out, but just, I wouldn't want to see that happen and people can't come in that bought the pass, those type of thing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Loretano. Yes, so we will have a limited window for when private groups can come in and rent the facility. So they won't be able to rent during open swim hours. So whenever we have open swim and it's open for the public, they're not going to be able to come in and rent out the facility, and we turn the public away, when they believe they can have access. This would be more birthday partings on some of the evenings and weekends when we're not open to the public for those open swimmer. We don't have lessons or a swim program in there, so that it would be outside of that. So that's why, again, our revenue for that is somewhat limited, because there aren't a ton of opportunities to rent the facility, because most of the time it's going to be open to the public. So there will be some opportunities for that, but definitely not large windows for people to come in for private use.
I've got a
Do you have a plan at the schools? There's 2 schools near there, so do we have an idea how we're going to handle that?
Yeah,
The
Mayor,
schools.
absolutely. We have great relationships with both of the schools that are adjacent
Okay.
to the park. We're in communications with them. We definitely want to, further see their needs and what options are available to us. I think it'll be a natural fit to have many of them participate in our programs, e-gaming, teen room, and even possibly, employment opportunities for any of our open gym staff or some of our lifeguard positions. Keep in mind, we currently have about 25 guards every summer at Loma Linda, and we're going to, more than quadruple that when we go year-round at the aquatics facility that's under construction. So we have a lot of needs, and that would be definitely a nice opportunity that we could leverage the proximity and work with them. But we have great relationships with the schools, and we look to further those with these facilities as well.
Thank you. Does somebody over here have a question? Yeah, Molly?
David, I think you just answered it. This is going to be a year-round aquatic center, right?
Yes, Councilmember Campbell, we will have 2 bodies of water. One will be more seasonal, and then the lap swim will be
What's the more
year-round.
seasonal? What's not going to be open year-round for us to go use?
So that'll be like your slides, your lazy river, the splash pool, if you will, the zero depth entry pool. Typically, that has more of a traditional Memorial Day to Labor Day feel. We may extend that a little bit on both sides of the calendar, but typically those go dark and aren't year-round amenities. Our lap pool, you typically have lap swimmers that will utilize the facility year-round for that lap swim exercise program. So that's really what we're envisioning right now.
Is this just because it's historically been done that way that they shut them down? I was hoping that since we are building this aquatic center, that we would be able to have it open year-round for use.
We will have the ability to heat bodies of water on an as-needed basis, but typically once school goes back, you typically don't have that demand, obviously, during the weekday. We may be able to do that, weather permitting, into the fall and open up earlier in the spring due to that. But traditionally, there's a dark period to that play pool demand.
Well, I was going to say, I think you're going to see a demand for using the pool for not only lap swimming, but just swimming. We use our pool. I don't have a pool personally, but my HOA has one. Well, they have 3. And we swim year-round, and not all the pools are heated. But we're in that pool all the time because it's exercise for us. And people who end up with heart conditions or whatever, the doctors tell them walking in the water is the best for you, and this, that, and the other. So I hope that we're going to be able to do some of that.
For sure, we will definitely have a portfolio of aqua aerobics, water exercise,
Okay.
Lap swimming, those type of things. So we definitely envision having that year-round.
Okay, good.
And we will monitor demand and requests and monitor our feedback from residents. If that demand's there and we can meet that need, we definitely will entertain that. But as of going in right now, we really see that lap swim the lap pool being the year-round body of water, if you will.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sherry?
Sorry, Sherry.
Oh, no, no, that's okay. First of all, I don't know how you're getting in a pool now because it's too cold for me personally. I need like bath water temperature type of thing, but understanding that it can be 100 degrees in October and 100 degrees in March, I appreciate the flexibility. But for heating it, I know there's a huge cost to heating continuously a pool, but the lap pool will be the one that is heated continuously, so is that the one?
Yep, Councilmember Lorentano, you are correct. So both pools will actually be heated because the overnight temperatures in aquatics, especially in April when we'll start to open up the play pool, the overnight temperatures still do get pretty chilly overnight. And so we will need to heat that pool in the early part of that season and then the latter part of that season as we kind of get into September. The competition pool will be heated potentially from September through about April. Is when we'll heat the competition pool. So that pool will be pretty much heated year round, and we'll use that for, as Councilmember Campbell mentioned, aquatics fitness classes. So we'll do glide fit yoga, we'll do water aerobics, potentially year-round swim lessons. We'll have lots of different opportunities throughout the year for people to utilize the facility. What we've typically seen is just a drop-off in demand for kind of the open swim time once it starts to cool off and people get a little bit chilly. Usually get more of the hardcore swimmers like Councilmember Campbell out there.
Yeah, the ones from Pebble Creek that apparently are swimming in non-heated pools now.
Are we finished with the questions at this point? Do you have anything else?
Thank you, Mayor. This will wrap up our facility use fees, and now we'll
Okay.
transition
All right. Thank you.
to the system-wide facility rental fees, and Mike will take us through that.
Thank you, David. And this is our last fees for your review tonight. As David mentioned, these fees apply to our system-wide park rental. So there will be some of these amenities at the recreation campus, but these fees, just for clarity for you all, is applied to all of our amenities at all of our existing parks and the new park as well. The slide layout is really similar. So as you see across the top, we have our system-wide park rentals. Just like I mentioned in the previous slide, we do recover 100% of our direct costs related to a rental. The philosophy that we have, especially with our park amenities, is we're going to maintain those park amenities regardless of if people are renting them or not. So we cut the grass, we keep the sidewalks clean, we empty the trashes, things like that on a regular basis, regardless of if there's a rental. So for the rental side, we're recovering those direct costs associated with the rental. So that's been the philosophy that we've had with our department, and that's what we'd like to continue with this fee structure as well. But as we get into the table, again, the facility type, not all of these are hourly, so you'll see denoted under the rental what type of time block there is. So for the Ramadas, it's a 4-hour block. For the courts, it's per hour, and for the fields, it's for a 2-hour block. So once again, you'll see the benchmark averages that we did for our Valley benchmarks. And then we have our current rates, because again, we do have a lot of these amenities in our current portfolio, and then what our proposed rates will be, and then along with our organized use rate. The organized use rate definition is exactly the same as we are proposing for the facility as we are for those parks. So Goodyear Little League, EYS, those groups that are serving the Goodyear community are going to continue to get that resident rate. This would only apply if we had a tournament promoter or something come in for those. So these are the averages, and then these are the current and proposed.
Yes, Brandon?
Can you remind me, I'm curious about the small and large, are all the Ramadas at the community park the same size? And are there smaller ones, I assume, than at this new park here?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councilmember Hanson. Yes, the current Ramadas in our portfolio are all small Ramadas. The large Ramada that we're referencing is going to be the large group Ramada that we'll have at the new recreation campus. So we have a large group Ramada that's coming on board with us. It's a much larger space for each of those blocks, and so there's a larger price for those.
No, that makes sense. How many more people or size do you expect? Just curious.
We're still calculating out kind of exactly how many. I mean, really, some of it's going to be once it's built, we'll kind of look at those capacities. Right now, we're looking about 40 people per spot. But that number is, again, we're still working on ironing out that final number for what groups can comfortably fit in there, because we don't want to overload the space and impede on other reservations.
Yes. No, thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions?
I just have one.
Yes, Wally?
So do we have a fee to rent the pickleball courts? And are they in here?
Yes, Councilmember Campbell. Yep, our current rate for the courts, so courts would fall under our pickleball courts, our basketball courts, sand
Just the
volleyball,
courts. Okay.
basketball. Yep, those are all grouped into one. So our current rate is $5 an hour for a resident. Our new fee doesn't change. It would be $5 for residents as well. Non-residents would see a slight increase, and then again, that organized use, if Pickleball of America wanted to come in and run a tournament not for Goodyear residents, then they would receive the highest rate.
But that's for, sorry.
Brandon, did you have
But
another?
that's if you want to reserve it. It's still open. If there's no one using it, you can just go use those amenities. It's just if you want to reserve it for that particular time slot that you want to be in.
That's correct, Councilmember Hampton. Yeah, all of these amenities will be available first come, first serve. If you're bringing a group and you want to have that dedicated space to play pickleball and you don't want to have to wait your turn, or you want to reserve the field for your team and you don't want other people playing on the field, that's where you would get a private use rental. But any other time, yeah, all those amenities would be open to the public and available. They can come in and utilize it as they need without paying a fee.
No other questions? It's very impressive, the organization of this and all that you took in. You answered all their questions, and you can see this by on the board. So congratulations to how you began this, and now we're about ready to end it, right? Well, not end it, the work's ahead of you. But I just have to compliment you and all your staff. Very organized and professional. And I love our other parks, but this is going to be spectacular. And it'll be a feature in our city. So tell everybody it's behind the scenes. Good job. We look forward to seeing you next stage.
Thank you, Mary. We really appreciate those comments, and we look forward to the next steps.
Great.
And speaking of that, we did get to our last slide here. So,
Oh, you did?
This
Okay.
kind of lets you know where we're at. So,
All right.
Hearing from you tonight helps us along in our process. Our next stop on the fee discussion would be coming back in December for council consideration of approval of the fees we shared tonight.
okay.
And then those fees would become effective 30 days after that time. So as you can see through the construction and our fee discussion, it'll be here soon. We're very excited. We can see that you're excited, and it's a great time to be in Goodyear.
Yes, Molly?
Can we buy passes before it opens? Can you do buy now and save 5% or something?
Councilmember Campbell, yeah, that is one of the things that we want to do, is we want to make sure that we get the fees posted, approved, and advertised, so we can start some of those pre-sale incentives. We
Great.
haven't really finalized the approach on that, but that gives us flexibility that anybody that we can sell a pass to, instead of having them stand in line that first day, really helps us out. So we're going to get creative and look at pre-sale opportunities and push them online in advance as much as possible.
PayPal, whatever, credit card, whatever, because the hype of this opening, everybody's going to want to get a pass or whatever right away and maybe the passes that you do the very first year are special or something, like.
Bill has a question?
I'm going to go back, and I apologize for that. Brandon asked the question earlier about the family structure, and you said you guys calculated a family of 4. And if it's a family of 5, then it's $800 to go to this public facility. And if it's a family of 6, as I would say, you're crazy enough to have 4 kids. That's a tall order. That's going to prevent people from bringing their families to this public amenity that we've created. I kind of have a problem with us limiting a family to just 4. A family is a family. If you decided to have 4 kids, God love you, you get a family price. And if you only had 1 kid, I'm sorry, but the family price is the family price. I mean, I think we should be treating this more like health insurance rather than a per body count. And so I have issue with that. I'll bring it up again at the meeting on the 14th if we don't see change, but I think we need to really take that into serious consideration. We did this for the public, not to make money. So I think we really need to think about that.
Go ahead,
Mayor,
and
Vice Mayor
address it.
Stipp, I really appreciate the comments, and really, that's why we're here tonight. We want to get the feedback from council before we bring this for an action item, and this is the forum to do that. So we hear your comments, and we will definitely take those from us as we leave tonight. So.
Anything else? Well, you've had a good learning process with Little League, right? We've had those circumstances, right, with big families and the affordability of it. You worked through that, and they all got to play, and the parents got to cheer them on. So I have great confidence in you that you'll come up with a plan that's maybe more moderate for the number of children in the family. So anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're getting there.
I'm just going to wait, let them get away from the table.
Great presentation, gentlemen. We're so excited.
Thank you.
Now is the time for council. Have any comments, commendation reports, and current events or requests? I do have something. I want to publicly thank the police and fire for the personal escort for my husband's burial this last week. And with all the sirens ringing and horns beeping, they took us to I-10. And with that, then the Patriots took over, and they took us all the way to the graveyard, and with motorcycles, and as they went along, they closed off all the incoming streets. So as you passed by, you saw cars parked here and parked there, and they take you already to the burial. So it was extra special. So I just want to thank them very much for that. And of course, thank Luke Air Force Base for the flag ceremony. And what really was very special, they had a flyover with 4 F-35s, which people kept saying to me, oh, that didn't happen. It had to be F-16s, but they were very gracious in that. So all the people that took part in it, it was a wonderful tribute to Ron. So it was perfect. So just want to make sure the city knows that that was great. So thank you. Okay, City Manager, do you have anything?
Sure, if you'll indulge me for just a moment. Mayor and Council, we do have our Fall Festival coming up this week. This year it's been modified to a drive-through exhibit, which includes lit Halloween-themed displays, goodies for each child, and a pumpkin for each car. It's a 4-night event that kicks off on Thursday, October 22nd, and runs nightly from 6 p.m. through 10 p.m. Originally, we only scheduled the event for 2 nights, Friday and Saturday. However, due to an overwhelming response, the team was able to add 2 additional nights. So although free to the public, pre-registration was required for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to assist with staggered vehicle queuing, and at this time, all reservations for all 3 nights have been filled. The good news is for Sunday night, no pre-registration is required, and it will serve as an overflow day. Participants will be able to drive through the exhibit from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. and will continue to hand out candy and pumpkins while supplies last.
Sounds fun. Anything? All right, this meeting is adjourned.